All right, let's talk about something huge that's been happening in India's education system. We're diving into a massive, fundamental change in how the country's teachers are actually trained. It's a really interesting story, moving from a pretty fragmented past to what's hoped to be a much more unified future.
So, the big question is, what does this all mean for someone who wants to become a teacher? How is that whole process, that whole journey actually changing? If you're thinking about teaching, or you're just curious about where education is headed, this is definitely for you. But, to really get what's coming, we've got to first take a look back.
Exactly. To figure out where we're going, we first need to understand where we've been. So let's kick things off by exploring the traditional way teacher training used to work in India.
Here's a quick roadmap for our journey. We're going to start before 2014, when things were, well, kind of all over the place. Then we'll hit 2014, when the first major shift happened. After that, we'll look at the massive new policy vision from 2020. And finally, we'll land on 2030, a date you're going to want to remember, because it changes everything.
Okay, so for the longest time, the main path for a lot of people was the Bachelor of Education, the B.Ed. But here's the thing. Before 2014, it was just a one-year course, and you could only do it after you'd already gotten your bachelor's degree. The biggest issue? It was almost all theory. Lots of book smarts, but not nearly enough practical in-the-classroom experience.
And it wasn't just the B.Ed. There was this whole alphabet soup of other courses out there. You had the BTC, the JBT, the DEL-Ed, and a bunch more. The main thing to get here is that each one was a little different, with its own focus and its own standards. It created this really complex and pretty inconsistent system for training teachers across the country.
So yeah, with all that complexity, you can probably see why the system was just ripe for a big change. Which brings us to a period of some major shifts.
And boom, 2014, the first big shakeup. The National Council for Teacher Education, the NCTE, stepped in and stretched the B.Ed program from 1 year to 2. Now, this wasn't just about adding more time. It was about adding more substance. The whole focus shifted away from pure theory and put a real emphasis on practical experience, making hands-on, in-school training mandatory for the very first time.
But honestly, that was just the warm-up act. The real revolution, the big one, landed in 2020 with the new Education Policy, or NAP. And we're not talking about just a few updates here. This thing proposed a complete top-to-bottom overhaul of the entire teacher training framework.
So, at the very heart of this huge overhaul is a brand new unified model. And it introduces an acronym you're going to hear a lot about, ITEP. In a way, you can think of ITEP as the new star of the show in the story of teacher education.
So what on earth is ITEP? It stands for the Integrated Teacher Education Program. Picture this. It's a single, 4-year, dual-major degree that you jump into right after 12th grade. And that word integrated is the absolute key. It mashes together a subject-specific bachelor's degree, like a BA or a BSc, with a B.Ed degree, all into one single cohesive program.
So let's just break down this new journey. Instead of getting a degree first and then maybe deciding later on that you want to teach, now you commit to it right out of high school. You enroll in ITEP and you start learning your chosen subject and the art of teaching, the pedagogy, at the exact same time. 4 years later, you graduate with that dual degree, fully ready to step into a classroom.
So what's the big advantage here? Well, the whole idea is that by learning what to teach and how to teach it simultaneously, you create a much deeper, more meaningful connection between the two. Future teachers get that practical, hands-on training right from the very beginning, and they're trained in modern teaching methods and technology as a core part of their education, not just as an afterthought.
Okay, so we've covered the what and the how, but let's just take a step back and get to the really big question, why? Why make such a massive change to the whole system? Why does all of this matter so much?
This is why. The year 2030, that's the deadline. By that year, ITEP is set to become the mandatory minimum qualification for anyone who wants to become a teacher. That means those traditional paths, the B.Ed, DEL, BTC, are all going to be phased out for new people entering the profession. This isn't just a new option, it is the new standard.
And the core mission behind this entire shift is actually pretty simple. It's all about quality and uniformity. The goal is to replace that old, fragmented system with a single, high-quality pathway. The hope is that this way, every single new teacher in the country is trained to the same excellent standard.
So there you have it. A single, integrated, 4-year program is set to become the future of teacher training in India, completely replacing all the paths that came before it.
And that leads us to our final question for you to think about. What's your take on this new model? Do you think this is the right direction for creating the next generation of educators?